Pittsburgh Steelers training camp is finally here. They are reporting to camp Tuesday today. So we've done a lot of talking about what to look forward to at training camp, but we're going to go over the things we haven't talked about enough, getting you ready, and also taking a caller's question on the air. I'm Chris Carter, host of the Locked On Steelers podcast, joined today by Josh Taylor of KDKA TV at 93.7 The Fan. It's going to be a fun episode. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button on this video if you enjoyed it. Hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes. Thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day. Joining me today is Josh Taylor from KDK TV, 93.7 The Fan. You see him all over the place. He's always here on the show, hitting it up with us. Josh, how you doing?
I'm good, man. I can't believe we're here. Report day is here, and now granted, I'm not going to be there for the first week or so, but I'm already
It's still wild.
Yeah, I'm already thinking about everything that goes down during the course of that day, and the people that you run into, and being shuffled around and like herded around like cattle as we move from place to place. It's a fun, exciting time, and the players, arriving and the vehicles pulling up and people just waiting to interview them. It just the whole pomp and circumstance, and the pageantry that's not really pageantry, I guess is the way to describe it. Sometimes it feels like it. Sometimes it just feels like a lot of noise and hooting and hollering. But still, it's here, and it has that air now. It's like, all right, now it feels like football season. So I'm all in for it. I'm ready to go.
I agree with that. So with that, I wanted to go over some things that I think we haven't discussed enough before training camp has, officially kicks off. Now, reporting day, we want people to understand, is not the first day of practice. Players show up, move in. There is a conditioning test. We're not allowed to really report what we see there. Oh, yeah. So unless they talk about it, like when Casey Hampton was struggling with it, many moons ago. But, but that's the light stuff. The first practice, and the first two practices are very light. Those will happen Wednesday and Thursday. But let's talk about one aspect that I think, kind of needs to be thought a little bit more about, and that's the fact that this is a very young team with a lot of players who have actually never been to St. Vincent College. And not just a young team, but that youth might be the biggest asset that we have not thought about as much as why this team could be a playoff team or could surprise a lot of people in a lot of different ways this year. You and I were talking about off air about all the players it's easier to name players on this roster who have been to Latrobe than those who haven't, because There's only a few of those. You think back, now that Ben Roethlisberger's gone, the only players that have been to Latrobe: Cam Hayward, Tyson Alualu, Terrell Edmunds. Minkah Fitzpatrick didn't. He came in the middle of the last season that they were at St. Vincent. Devin Bush, Cameron Sutton. You go to the offensive line, Chukwuma Okorafor, Diontae Johnson, Mason Rudolph is the only quarterback, Benny Snell is the only running back, Zach Gentry is the only tight end. It's a very small list of guys who fit that protocol, but I think that's also something that works in their favor to say, hey, guys, like, this is what we're going to be from now on. This is the identity that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be: young, aggressive, fast, and guys playing more to the style of play that they're going to establish in the first step after the Ben Roethlisberger era.
You've heard me talk about this before, how important this season is and how the preseason leading into the season is important, because now that everything you just laid out being there, and the names that have come and gone, and even the coaching staff that's come and gone, this is now Mike Tomlin's team.
Yeah.
Lock, stock, and barrel.
And it always was. But there was always that caveat that Ben Roethlisberger was his own dude.
It wasn't his quarterback, or maybe it wasn't always his coordinator. Well, both coordinators are now his.
Yes,
this is now his quarterback. Kevin Colbert has since moved on; he's retired. So Omar Khan is in. This is an entirely brand new slate that we're dealing with here. They have completely turned the page. They haven't just turned the page; they're in a whole new chapter of this story. So this is now, as much as we can talk about Mike Tomlin and his resume and what he's done and what he hasn't done, they have now hit the reset button and they are starting now at ground zero. And now we're going to see what he gets to do with a team that he has to build, that he has helped assemble, and that he has helped, to help develop on his own with some of the veterans on this team. And I'm glad you bring up that there's only a few guys that have been to Latrobe for training camp, because the guys that have been there, those are the ones that are probably going to be leaned on a bit. They're going to be ones to be trusted a little bit. TJ Watt's another one. And that's another one. But these are the guys that they're probably going to lean on. Mike Tomlin's probably going to lean on Cam Hayward. He's probably going to lean on TJ Watt. He's probably going to lean on Diontae Johnson and say, hey, look, you guys are the ones that have been here. We got to make sure these other guys are here. They know what's going on, and make sure they're with the program and ready to go. And same thing with Terrell Edmunds. Those guys in the defensive backfield, making sure these guys are with the program and ready to go, because this is an entirely new slate here that we're dealing with. And I think another thing that kind of sticks out is when you talk about the youth on this team, there are entire position groups that are under the age of 30, which is just hard to imagine. Like if you're looking at the tight end group is under the age of 30. Yep. The quarterback group is under the age of 30. The wide receiver group is under the age of 30. You got a lot of youth on this team. Not only do you have youth, you have athleticism too. Yeah, I think you mentioned it, that they're going to be aggressive and fast, but it's not just going to be on defense. It's going to be on offense too. There's a bit of a different feel just to what the personnel and the roster looks like and how it's shaped, as opposed to just the names and the faces changing, or maybe ages being a little bit lower or a little bit smaller on a piece of paper. This is going to be a much different looking team. And I know people are going to try to look at this team with previous seasons as a lens, and I think they're going to get confused and it's going to mess them up. You're going to have to start from very beginning, hit the reset button here with how you look at this team, because they're not going to look like teams that we've seen just in the past couple of years. That's going to throw some people off.
Now, I do agree. It's going to be, it's going to be a team that I think Steelers fans are going to have to come to grips with. They're going to be like, wait a second, that's not normal. And I talked about this before, for all the things that we've talked about, like in the quarterback room, you're going to have a quarterback who can throw the ball deep again. You're going to have quarterbacks that are mobile again, but you're also going to have quarterbacks who might not be as safe with the football as Ben was last year. And that's not to say Ben was always safe with it, but he didn't take as many risky shots because he knew he couldn't take them. And that's an aspect that kind of helped the Steelers at times. It did hurt them as well, but it's going to be a new balance. It's something that I think that that you're not going to be used to watching if you're a Steelers fan. But a big aspect of this, like you said, the tight end room, all in their mid to early 20s. The wide receiver room, mid to early 20s. The running back room, early 20s. They're not even in the mid to early 20s. They're all the early 20s. That's all your skill positions. And then for your offensive line, I think your oldest one is Mason Cole, but everyone else mid to early 20s. This is an offense, and then even your quarterback room, Mitch Trubisky, mid to early 20s. He's late 20s more so, but still, this is a whole group that gets to basically feel themselves out together. And I think that there's a lot of things that you can't define what this offense is going to look like based off of anything you've seen on tape from the Steelers over the past few years.
First time in 35 years that the quarterback room is all under the age of 30. That hasn't happened in a long time, because you're talking about there was always at least one veteran that was there that had been there for a while, whether it was Bubby Brister or Neil O'Donnell or Tommy Maddox or Ben Roethlisberger. There was always some guy there, or even Charlie Batch for that matter. There was always a guy who had some experience and had been around for a while. Granted, there are a couple guys with experience on this roster like Mitchell Trubisky, but at the same time, he's still in his late 20s. So this is an entirely different dynamic that we're talking about here. And it's one of those things where you can't really put a cap on the expectation right now. Right now, the possibilities are endless. Now, granted, we know things will start to come back down to zero once
we will understand
starts.
Their limitations at some point.
We'll get the understanding of what they're really going to be. But at this point, you kind of have everything on the table right now.
I agree. There's a lot on the table, and that's the fun of this, is that they can go in a lot of different directions. It's like, you have no idea how this group could turn out. You know that they're going to turn out a certain way. You know that they're not going to be some perfect team or some great. It's not like just everything's going to work out, but it's exciting to think: will they become a play action offense? Will they become a rushing offense? Will they get back to? Will they become a different offense that we haven't really seen a whole lot of, because Matt Canada is trying to do something different? Those are the fun things that I think are going to be fun to talk about. But there's also a really fun component of the defense that we haven't talked about enough. We talked about the offense there, but I want to look at the secondary and an aspect of that secondary that I don't think we've looked at hard enough before training camp starts. We'll do that in just a second here. But first, I got to talk to you guys about Dave, one of our great sponsors, and it's an amazing banking app it's here to help you with your budgeting. If you're living paycheck to paycheck or struggling to make ends meet, it can be really stressful when unexpected expenses come up. Now, Dave can help you get out of a pinch when you really need it. Dave is the banking app that can help you get up to $500 instantly with what they call extra cash. That's more money to fill your tank, buy a wedding gift, catch up on bills. You can finally tackle those expenses that have been stressing you out without any hangups. There's no interest and no credit check needed. Millions of people have already downloaded the Dave app to get the financial relief that they need with extra cash. So if you're in a pinch and you need some extra help, download Dave and think of it as a helping hand from future you. Download the Dave app from the App Store right now. That's DAVE Dave. Sign up for an extra cash account and get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer fees apply. Banking provided by Evolve. Member FDIC. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm Chris Carter. He's Josh Taylor. I wanted to talk about the secondary, Josh, because they're also a younger room. Joe Hayden's gone now. You look at the cornerback room, oldest guy there, Arthur Maulet at 29 years old. But James Pierre, 25. Cam Sutton, Levi Wallace, Ahkello Witherspoon, all 27 years old. And that is a young group that you look at and you're saying, that's going to be an interesting group to see how that pans out in the totem pole, or how it works out for the depth chart. Minkah Fitzpatrick, Terrell, Edmunds, all of them 25 years old. Damontae Kazee, 29 years old. Carl Joseph, 28 years old. These are all guys in their mid to late 20s. And then you throw Trey Norwood, and you could say your early 20s as well. This is going to be a secondary that I think Teryl Austin, and you've talked about Teryl Austin before, the big reason why I wanted to have you on today's show, the ability to mix things up in this secondary. We don't know who's going to win the outside cornerback jobs between Sutton, Wallace, and Witherspoon. You can think Wallace and Witherspoon if you want. You could think Sutton and Witherspoon if you want. You can think Sutton and Wallace if you want. But it's going to be a mix of those three. But whoever loses that battle most likely gets a first crack at the slot position. But in the slot position, they're also going to have to deal with Arthur Maulet. And they're going to have to deal with Trey Norwood, who was really coming on there and the team really seems to like. And none of that takes into account the fact that the Steelers have three safeties in their secondary who have considerable starting experience in the NFL. Of course, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Terrell Edmunds, but now Damontae Kazee. And the question really becomes, how do they deploy this unit in a game? What assignments do you give to these guys? But I think that's also the genius of it, right? Because if we're asking that questions, that means offensive coordinators and quarterbacks that have to figure out this defense will have to also ask that question.
They're going to have to ask those questions, and they're going to have to ask the question of, hey, how are we going to actually, structure ourselves toward whatever personnel package they put in, especially considering the fact that the guy that's going to be putting them in place, the guy that's going to be calling all those calls and making sure everybody's in the place they need to be, he just became the top paid safety in the league. So that becomes a problem too, because you got to worry about what they're going to do, but you got to worry about where number 39 is too. You got to keep an eye on Minkah Fitzpatrick, because if he's able to get back to what he was able to do before last season, where he seemed to have to be the first, last, and only line of defense in the run game and led the team in tackles, which is still mind-blowing. If your free safety leads the team in tackles, you got problems. If he can get away from that and go back to being the guy that was the most impactful in the passing game, as opposed to the most impactful in the run game, now you got to deal with, hey, how are we going to try to, divvy up the portions of the field at the safety position if Minkah Fitzpatrick is back there and we know what he can do with the ball? We know Damontae Kazee can do things with the ball. He's had 7 interceptions in the season, led the league a few years ago. So now you got guys back there that if something goes wrong, they could take advantage of mistakes. And we know, Chris, you and I have talked about Teryl Austin ever since he showed up here in 2019. And I've been saying for 2 years, he's your eventual new defensive coordinator. I've been saying it for 2 years now. And one of the things I liked about him was I thought that him and Mike Tomlin kind of had a kinship of theory, if you will. They both believe in their defenses being aggressive. They both believe in stopping the run, but they also both believe in forcing turnovers. So now when you got 2 safeties back there, not counting what Terrell Edmunds can be, because I don't need Terrell Edmunds to be, a all over the place, sideline to sideline, just playmaking safety. I need him to be a guy that just does his job well. And if he can do that, I'm happy with that. Same thing with the corners. That's one of the biggest criticisms I've heard is that there's no real true CB1 on this team. I'm sitting there going, you got to go back about 30 years to find a real true CB1 on this team because there weren't any in the previous 2 decades. There were a lot of guys that were really good at doing their jobs and fit the scheme well. Give me guys that are good at their jobs and fit the scheme well. If Ahkello Witherspoon could look the way he did in the last 4 or 5 games of the season, where he eventually became the team leader in interceptions, if Levi Wallace could be as aggressive and look the way he looked in man coverage in Buffalo, and if Cam Sutton can be as reliable of a player, especially on possession downs and in the red zone with some of the plays he made last year on this very defense, I'm happy with that. If those guys can do those things and you bring in a guy like Damontae Kazee that we know can make plays on the ball, now you're talking about a pass defense that might not necessarily lock everybody down, but they're going to be a lot better at keeping teams contained and making the job easier for those guys up front, like Cam Hayward, like TJ Watt, like Alex Highsmith, whom I expect to take a leap this season if he stays healthy. So now you got the guys up front making their job easier as well. And all of it comes together because the coverage and the pass rush has to come together if you're going to get to the quarterback. So now all of that being changed, I feel a lot better about this defense than probably most people do. And I know there's concerns about the run defense, and that's fine. I think that was addressed too, as far as addressing the depth at defensive line, as far as bringing in Myles Jack. I thought they did those things that were necessary to at least change it up. Will it be better? We'll find out. But changing it up at least was the objective, and I thought they did that.
I agree. This is now a defense that you cannot say looks the same anymore. Also, if you're one of those people who said, "Oh, well, the cornerback room isn't is always so weak," and there was a time where it was. I mean, they didn't invest in it, but the fact of the matter is they've invested in it. They've gotten a whole bunch of veterans. I've said this a bunch on this show. This isn't Cody Sensabaugh. This isn't Antoine Blake. This isn't Artie Burns. These are 3 veterans who know what it's like in the NFL, who competed in the NFL and have put out their tape that looks like, hey, this guy can be a starting corner and can contribute. And he's not someone that the defense can just pick on or the offense can just pick on every single play. And that to me is a big part of this is if the corners just don't get picked on, if they're just solid, they don't have to be supreme playmakers, just solid. It allows the pass rush to know that, hey, these guys got our back. It allows the safeties behind them to say, hey, you know what? They're going to hold this down. Let's do some. Let's get freaky. Let's go. Minkah go be that center fielder. Go fly all over the place. Be the X factor. Terrell Edmunds, take away the tight end. Be happy to do that. Don't worry about going to help those guys. And Damontae Kazee, if you're around, maybe you're blitzing. Maybe you're in the slot. Maybe you're doing something. But the point is that they're going to be able to trust those guys. And I think that is going to be worth a lot. And I think that, with the combination of a Kazee, of Edmunds, the flexibility that they're going to have at the cornerback room, this is going to be more flexible a defense than we've seen with the Pittsburgh Steelers for some time. And that doesn't even include the fact that both of their linebackers that are projected to start in Devin Bush and Myles Jack are athletic types that can also help in the middle of the field, unlike, in past years where they were stuck with like John Bostic or Vince Williams or guys that, were okay, but if you put them in space, they were toast.
Right. There was always one guy that felt like the anchor of the 2 linebackers that couldn't really move around that well and couldn't make plays. And you always heard the criticism that, they need better linebackers that can move to the ball and make plays in space. Well, now you got 2 of them. One is year 2 off of an ACL injury. The other one played on a team that wasn't really good and was, still considering the fact they didn't play on a really great team or a really great defense, still led them in tackles last year in Myles Jack. So now you got 2 guys that, assuming all things are equal, because I don't think they were for Devin Bush last year. I don't think all things were equal. I think they're closer to what they are. I think they're closer now to what they were a couple years ago. So if that is the case, I think they're going to be better by default. But I'll continue to say this. With a healthy defensive line, you're going to see a much easier effort for the linebackers because those guys will be able to make their job a little bit easier. Because once those guys are healthy, when Tyson Alualu is healthy, this run defense is as good as anybody around, and the numbers bear that out. That really is the important thing. So if you have a healthy Alualu and Larry Ogunjobi just really doing this thing, not even having to look like he did a few years ago in Cleveland, just look close to what you did last year in Cincinnati. I would be fine with that too. And everything else as far as the depth behind those guys. Chris Wormley Chris Wormley played extremely well being pressed into duty. Montravius Adams, the more he got on the field, the better he looked when pressed into duty. Now all those guys are starting the season part of this group. They're all starting it as part of the depth that can rotate in. So now they're all walking in week one ready to go if something goes wrong, instead of having to pick and choose off of the scrap heap or get a guy from this practice squad and sprinkle this guy in here. Now they'll all be ready to go in week one, and it'll be a much stronger unit. So all that comes together to where you talked about how the corners doing their jobs might make the upfront guys' job easier. Well, the upfront guys, if they're able to get to the quarterback might have to let the ball go a little bit sooner or make mistakes, and the guys in the back can take advantage of it. Because I'm going to go back to this again. 3 seasons ago, this defense not only led the league in sacks, they led the league in takeaways. I think that is the blueprint that they want to follow. And it's not a coincidence that it was Teryl Austin's first season in Pittsburgh. I think they want to get back to what they looked like in 2019 and maybe even parts of 2020. If they can do that, then you're going to see a vast improvement.
I'm right with you, man. I think that is the blueprint there. We got to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to get Josh a chance to chime in on something that a caller asked about. It's about coaching and head coaching with Mike Tomlin. We'll do that in just a second here, right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Be right back. Back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter. He's Josh Taylor. We're talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, we've done a lot about why the least talked about things heading into training camp. But let's talk about something we actually discussed yesterday. And I'm not here to regurgitate all the things we said about Ben Roethlisberger's interview he did with Ron Cook in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. But y'all, if you want to hear that, go watch yesterday's episode or listen to yesterday's episode. I chopped that up with Wes Euler. But a caller listened to that episode and had some interesting thoughts. We're going to get this caller, Kevin from Maryland, who had a question, and we'll get Josh's thoughts on that. Here's Kevin.
Chris Carter. What's up, man? Kevin Tate here, calling from Southern Maryland, Steeler fan in Commanders and Ravens territory. Just got done watching your Big Ben's Regrets episode, and I agree with you and Wes Euler 100%. And I want to just comment on the Mike Tomlin part of it real quick. Big Ben made it a point to include Terry Hepner as college coach and Bill Cowher, his first professional coach, as to not coddling. I think when Mike Tomlin got the job, Big Ben was on his way to superstardom, and we all know quarterbacks get superstar treatment. So Mike Tomlin had to work around that himself. And I don't know if Big Ben sees it like that, but I think that's just the reality of it. I think that's pretty much all I have to say, man. And another thing, if Mike Tomlin was to lose his job today, he would have a new job tomorrow in the NFL. But, hey, thanks, man. Keep doing what you're doing. You guys do a great job on the Locked On Network. Really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin, for your question. Remember, if you ever want to call in for a question on the show, hit us up at 412-223-6644 to call in and leave a name leave a voicemail with your name, where you're from, and keep your question to around a minute. You can, if you're international, you can email LOSteelersTopicBag@gmail.com, attach an MP3, and again, leave your name, where you're from, so we can see it. But Josh, let's dive into that. I mean, he talked about, Ben Roethlisberger's, I brought this up yesterday. Ben made a specific thing where he said he wasn't coddled by his college coach, that he wasn't coddled by Bill Cowher, but that he didn't say that about Tomlin. And so implying Tomlin coddled him. But here's what I said. I do think it's accurate. Tomlin did, in a way, coddle him, because he kind of made himself to have to be coddled. This team did everything they could for him. It'd be one thing if the Steelers said, you know what, we're not going to getting you a superstar running back. We're not going and paying all this money for this superstar diva wide receiver. We're not going and paying out all this money for these offensive linemen. We're going to reinvent this defense right now. Instead of waiting until we draft naturally, with 2017, getting TJ Watt and then getting Minkah Fitzpatrick down the line. Instead of waiting all that time, we're just going to make the defense great again. And you are going to just have to deal with this mediocre offensive roster with a weak offensive line like the last time this team won a Super Bowl. And here's some receivers that are aged, but they're decent, and make it work. And here's a couple athletic guys in the backfield. Make it work. They didn't do that. They gave him every opportunity. When he made mistakes, they covered for him. They never came back on him when he was saying and doing things, embarrassing the team with things like the motorcycle accident, things like getting accused of sexual assault, and then also getting in trouble with things. Twice. Doing that twice. and also going on his radio show and, like we said, doing things like this interview and airing out the team's laundry. All that being said, Josh, I think Mike Tomlin knew that you could kind of drive that split with an Antonio Brown, with Le'Veon. You could do that with those guys. But if you did it with Ben Roethlisberger, it would have caused a massive split or a massive problem in the Steelers locker room that would have been very tough to reconcile or to recover from. And that it was best to hang in there, smooth out that relationship until his contract doesn't hurt you anymore. And then you deal, and then you say, hey, Ben, we're not going to be paying you all this money. You can retire or do something else, but we suggest you retire. That, to me, I think that Kevin was onto something there.
I totally agree with that. And I'll agree with the fact that Mike Tomlin definitely had to coddle Ben Roethlisberger at times. He talked about this during the Pivot podcast. He said a lot of things.
He did.
During the Pivot podcast that brought a lot of things to light that we either didn't know about, or if you did know, it confirmed it for you. And the one thing he talked about, now he used very specific words when he talked about Ben Roethlisberger, but he said, when you've had a guy like that the whole time and you've seen what he's done, you get used to having that guy around. You get used to, just thinking, okay, he's going to be able to do this. I always remember the one wired up situation where, it's before a game and Ben's getting loose and Tomlin comes over to him and says, he's like, hey, if we win the coin toss, we want the ball. And Ben goes, well, that's a good defense over there. He goes, I know, I got you. If I'm looking for the biggest flaw that Mike Tomlin had, he might have trusted Ben too much.
I agree. I've said that for years. I think that was his biggest fault.
That might be my biggest criticism of him, but I understand why. It's warranted. It's the NFL. It's a quarterback league. And if you got one that can perform at the right situations, then you're going to trust that guy as long as you can, because you know what life is like when you don't have that guy. And you've seen other teams that know what life is like when you don't have that guy. I will pick out one thing Kevin said. He said when Mike Tomlin came in, Ben was on his way to superstardom. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I would say Ben was on the cusp of it, but I would say Ben was approaching stardom after Mike Tomlin got there.
Yeah, I'd agree with you.
Here's one thing that gets kind of left in the shuffle. 2007 season, Ben didn't have as great of seasons those first 3 years.
He did.
The 2007 season, 65% completion percentage. He threw for 32 touchdowns, and that was the most he threw for almost a decade after that.
Yep.
That was also one of the best seasons he had as far as just as far as accuracy, just as far as touchdown percentage, cutting down on interceptions. He had one of his lowest interception percentages that season. That was the year where Ben Roethlisberger really started to turn into, hey, it's not just the defense driving it here. The quarterback is also pretty good, because they started to open things up a little bit more. Bruce Arians became the offensive coordinator. He started letting Ben go down the field more often. That happened under Mike Tomlin. It did not happen under Bill Cowher. So, yes, the postseason success was there under Bill Cowher, but the individual success for Ben did not happen until after Mike Tomlin got here. And he put a lot of trust in Ben. From the very beginning, at 25 years old, he gave him the keys to the car and let him drive it. And I think that's what's something that a lot of people, don't try to focus on. They think there was just Ben just assuming this. No, Mike Tomlin was the guy that opened that door for him. So with that trust also came a little bit of different treatment as years went along and things started to pile up and the organization had to go into damage control. A lot of different things were happening here. And so there had to be some damage control associated with it because they gave this guy the keys. So they had to pay for good insurance in case he wrecked the car. They had to try to make sure they had everything, in place in case something went wrong. And they had to do it probably more often than once. And I'll say this one more thing before I let you move on from this, because I know we're kind of tight on the show here. The dynamic, and I've talked about this so many different times, the dynamic with Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, Ben Roethlisberger, and I'll even throw Martavis Bryant in at the very pinnacle. Sure. That dynamic, I don't think people really knew what it truly, truly was. You put them on the field and the Killer Bees are unstoppable. That's irrefutable. But when you saw how these guys really interacted and how they really got down, so to speak, if you needed to find the picture of it and understand it completely, all you had to do was walk into the locker room a few years ago.
Yep.
Because you look at one corner, and in the close corner here off the left side, that's where Antonio Brown's locker was. The far left corner is where Martavis Bryant's locker was. The far right-hand corner is where Ben's locker was. And then the near right-hand corner near the door was where Le'Veon Bell's locker was. These guys were nowhere near each other. They were all in their own little worlds. And Mike Tomlin had to try to keep all of this on the same track, as he always used to say, moving train on the track. He had to keep all these guys that were really all in their own little worlds and keep them all focused on the same thing, singularly focused, as he always likes to say. He had to keep all these guys in the same boxcar and the same tray moving on the same track. And it didn't always work the way it was supposed to. And there were some days when it worked, and there were some days when it didn't. But it didn't take from the fact that wasn't an easy job, because as much as Ben said, yeah, some guys are, it used to be team first, but then they became about the self. Well, guess what one of the biggest criticisms about Ben was from his own teammates when he got there, was that he wasn't always a team guy. And I got confirmation about that from two guys that used to play on that defense that I've worked with in previous years that have told me, hey, there were guys in the locker room that used to get on him for X, Y, and Z, for him doing this or him throwing guys under the bus. And this was early in his career. So this is something that's not like it's a brand new thing that was just discovered because Ben opened his mouth. No, this is something that was, if you were privy to it, you knew it for a while.
Excuse me.
It's disappointing that it has to come out now, that we haven't even gone through a full training camp since he retired, and we're getting back to this. And I hope this is like the last time we hear about this for a while, because I really do want to see that new chapter that we talked about earlier in the show. I want to see that chapter happen, and I want to be able to look at it with fresh eyes instead of worrying about things from the past and being in the rearview mirror. Leave it there, and let's keep moving forward, because I think there's another dynamic, and you and I talked about this. I've talked about how I'm so glad, and it's refreshing to see quarterbacks that are addressing the situation like adults. Mitchell Trubisky handled the situation of drafting Kenny Pickett like an adult. Kenny Pickett handled the situation about being the number 3 guy at minicamp. And he's like, look, I'm a rookie. I just got here. I know I got to earn my way. They're handling these situations like adults. You got a running back in Najee Harris and only believes in just doing his job, doing it well, and helping everybody else get to that level. On the other side of the ball, you got Cam Hayward, who's trying to get everybody pulled from the same rope, and he's trying to drag Kenny Pickett over next to him and say, hey, sit down so I can teach you some stuff, because Cam Hayward's the last old school guy on this team that knew what that dynamic was. So if that guy's talking, you listen to him, and I think Kenny Pickett will, because I think he will be an eventual leader of this team. That's the one element that we also haven't talked about. This is a drama-free training camp. At least
there's no story here to be made that's off the field and crazy.
And you're talking about the guy who used to have a radio segment called "Spinning the Steelers Wheel of Drama." I got no spokes on that wheel that are drama right now, because you got guys that are here to just work. All that other stuff is gone, and part of why it stayed around so long was the last guy to leave. Whether you want to admit it or not, whether you want to accept it or not, whether or not you like it, like it or hate it, sing it or scream it. It is what it is. It's the truth. And now all of that is gone, and they get to start all over.
And I think it ties back to why Kevin asked the question and why he said he appreciated it, because he's saying Mike Tomlin deserves credit for guiding them through that. One,
Absolutely.
Again, never having a losing season, but always keeping them competitive and finding it to go so smooth that Ben's exit was perfect. There was no team besmirchery. The team gave him the perfect send-off that you could give a guy when you're not a Super Bowl team that year. It was, and if he wants to complain in articles about stuff, that's fine. But anyone who looks at it now, as we saw in the YouTube comments under the video we did yesterday, a lot of people were just like, Ben has nothing to complain about anymore. They did everything right by him. I think Tomlin deserves credit for getting them out of that. Now he has to earn more credit on being able to win with this next crew. Last thought here, Josh.
How many times have we seen other teams, Chris, that had locker room drama or contract disputes, or this guy didn't get along with this guy, or this guy's feuding with the coach, or the coach and GM are getting along, and the season goes off the rails? I mean, everything just falls apart.
Yep.
This was a team that was dealing with that on a regular basis and still making the playoffs, still actually getting deep into the playoffs in some instances.
Yep.
Even got themselves to an AFC championship game against the Patriots in Foxborough, which is, tough sledding in the Belichick and Brady era. But this team did that. They were doing that despite everything swirling around them. We want to talk about how it's this guy's fault when things fall apart, but we never give Mike Tomlin credit for keeping things on that same track when all this stuff was still swirling around and they were winning games and going deep into the playoffs. We don't give him credit for that. So if you're going to give him credit for the bad things that happened, you got to give him credit for being able to get some good out of everything that was happening in the periphery. It has to happen. You can't ignore it.
Absolutely. I do think it's a big thing. We're over our time here, Josh. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let people can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Josh Taylor HD. That's the best place, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on Instagram, I believe on Facebook as well. Pumping this out in the next couple of days. And Chris, I know I had you on my show to talk about this. The Pittsburgh for PPS backpack drive that's going on. 93.7 The Fan is partnering up with WAMO, also with 1020 AM. We're collecting backpacks. You can donate. You can buy some. There's a link on the 93.7thefan.com page. Help support and help get some backpacks for local students for this upcoming school year. Chris and I are both PPS alums, Alderdice and Shinley. So, we love to represent the city. This is a big deal for both of us. So if you get the opportunity, please go check that out.
Absolutely. Please do check it out. Thanks so much, Josh, for joining the show today. It's always a pleasure to have you. Thanks so much for you all checking out the Locked On Steelers podcast. We'll be updating you tomorrow with how reporting day went and everything that we got from that. You can also read my work at SteelersNow.com if you want the articles that we're going to be publishing while we're at camp. Thanks to everyone for checking us out. Remember, we're at Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. Like the video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get all of our daily content. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. If you want to help us out, go on Apple Podcasts, rate us 5 stars with a positive comment. Do both at the same time. You get a special shout out at the end of the show. Like this person, Curtis24 says, best Steelers podcast. Thank you so much, Curtis. And he says, if you want to know all things Steelers, go no further. And you go no further because you won't get better info than right here. Thanks so much, Curtis24, for your 5-star review. If you want your shout out, leave us one. We will get to it as soon as we can. Thanks again for Josh. Back tomorrow talking about the reporting day for Steelers training camp right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.